This is New England Soccer Weekly with Tom Quinlan, Nick Giuliano, and Mike DeSilva on 790 The Score.
All right, New England Soccer Weekly rolls along here on this gorgeous Saturday, and bringing more of the sun is the man from the land of the sun in California, where it's beautiful, where all the beautiful people are, and he's beautiful too. Maximiliano Bretos, Max Bretos from MLS Season Pass on New England Soccer Weekly. He's on the call for Columbus and the Revs this weekend. It's the second time he gets to see the Revs this year. A much different team than what he saw in Los Angeles, California a couple of weeks ago. Max, how are you?
Pretty good. I got to say, we've had a long winter out here. So if you guys are getting some sunshine, I don't want to say that, but I mean, it's getting a little old. I mean, usually by April, I can dust out my beach cruiser and the sunscreen, but I've not had that opportunity yet. But you guys have been getting nice weather out there?
I know. I think it's been warmer in New England than it has been in California for the entire year.
They've gotten snow this year. It's a blizzard. Yeah. Welcome to hell.
Yes.
It's like 85 degrees here today.
Yeah.
We've had more rain than Seattle this year, and I'm not complaining because we need it. We've been in a major drought, but it's getting cold. But hey, when I was at my ESPN days, I was there in Connecticut, so I got to share your New England weather. Loved it until it got really snowy and blizzardy in April. Then I'm like, all right, let's get back to it.
You made the right career choice by going to LA and getting in with LAFC, which I would love to talk to you about that. Now you're with MLS Season Pass, but you've been with LAFC since its inception, so it's pretty cool to see that you've been watching them grow. But you talk about making it rain. I don't know if you're going to see goals making it rain this weekend between Columbus and New England. Two very good teams offensively, but
you don't know if there's going to be a lot of goals this weekend.
Well, I mean, Petro's in net, so
that is true.
There you go. So
both these teams have been scoring.
You got a special one there in goal, but yeah, Columbus scores a ton, and it's weird. I actually spoke to Bruce Arena this morning. We had our coach call, and he's aware of that. He said it comes from so many different directions. So, but New England's pretty tidy. I know you mentioned the LAFC game, which is an absolute outlier when you look at the Revs. It was a bad night for them for no reason. And again, LAFC is just clicking on all cylinders. But New England's really tidy defensively, and that's going to be an interesting dynamic to see if they can keep the scoring down and keep Columbus at bay.
What was the thing
limit the chances?
What was the thing that stuck out to you today when you talked to Bruce?
He's such an incredible guy. When I see him, he remembers things that from like 20 years ago, because I've had the chance to interview him. I followed him around when he was with the U.S. men's national team. I always thought it was a pain in the rear, and he always is so complimentary. Little humdingers as well that he pops in there. And if it ever gets hairy, I always remind him that I read his book. So I go, hey, I read your book, man. Signed copy, I appreciate it. But he was when I spoke to him at the LAFC game, what was different is he was telling me back then, don't worry about it. It's too early in the season. Don't put too much stock into what these guys are doing. But he was a little more giving to what's happened now after 7 match days in the season for certain players. So that he pointed that out about Dylan Barrera. We have a better idea. He is molding into a more consistent player. And then he was really happy about the options in attack. And that was, with Josie Altidore, Brioni, and Bobby Wood, all those guys, when you throw them in with Gustavo Bo, who can play a bunch of positions. But those 3 guys, I think he's happy that they're coming along. And he seems pretty optimistic that things are about to click.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that after that Montreal game, and kind of feels like they're moving in the right direction. And with that lineup that they had the other night out there was something that we were talking about earlier on the show. It feels like Bruce got what he wanted to as close as possible of a first-choice lineup the other night. Obviously, Sans Vrioni. It seems like these are the guys that should be starting with Bruce right now.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the group, and I would agree with him that he wants to obviously develop some depth in positions, but he's been really well served by these guys who've kind of popped in there. The two kids like Noel Buck, they're looking for a little more consistency. They're young players. They're the ones that may slip in there and give them that depth from time to time. But I love the fullbacks. They're such a consistent duo. I was pretty. I don't know what the reason is. I have to do a little more homework why DeJuan Jones wasn't on that roster for the U.S. men's team, but he would seem like a slam dunk. Maybe there's a good reason I wasn't I'm not privy to, but him and Brandon. I mean, any MLS club would love to have two guys that bomb up like that and are as good as they are. The center back pairing has to be one of the better developments anywhere in the league. I mean, that's like the sweet spot. If you can anchor down in front of a goalkeeper, the ill Petrovic, that is. I think, to your point, they've been healthy. They're getting healthier with Gustavo Bo coming back, and that's been a gift because he's come back and he's been sensational. You can't always. It says a lot about the player, but you can't always assume that that's going to happen. And then Latif and Matt in the midfield. I mean, it's weird because I didn't mean to do it. I kept mentioning every pairings, and I think that is a big part of it. These guys work together well, and within the system, within the fabric of the club. And now you have, at least according to Bruce, really happy with what the offense is doing. I mean, Dylan Barrero in that LAFC game was probably his worst game he's played in Major League Soccer. He just couldn't get into rhythm. But he's bounced back from that. And I'm so excited to see him play. He's like that handful of young players. And then he gets to play with Carles and Gustavo, and that's going to make him a lot better. That first group, as you pointed out, for New England, they're staying healthy. That's the best in the league. That's going to be a tough crack.
What's interesting, Max, because this is a team 2 years ago that won the Supporters' Shield out in the first round of the playoffs. Last year, ended up being towards the bottom half of the table for many different reasons. But you, along with your other Apple personalities that come on the show week to week, very high on this team this year.
Always.
Regardless of the record, you seem to be along the lines of them as well, that you're just high on this New England team right now.
It's because you look for maybe there's a flaw here, and no team is perfect. I know New England would obviously like to have a little more coverage in certain positions, but just as you said on that 11, good goalkeeper, great engine room, excellent fullbacks, lots of scoring options. I mean, what's not to like? They have a great spirit when they go on the road. Again, without exception of the LAC game, but they got the win at DC. There is it's a very complete team, and I haven't seen all the clubs. I haven't been able to call them all this season. This is the second time for me, but I have seen a good share of them, and I try to watch as much as I can on Apple TV. I'm watching a little more than I should, to be honest. My wife's starting to complain MLS season pass is always in the top tier of our channel setup, but New England is a cut above from what I've seen, and they're fun to watch. So this game in particular. By the way, I've been really high on the East. We're based in the West, and we're like, okay, the West with Seattle and LAFC and the Timbers and the Galaxy who both struggled, Sporting Kansas City who's also struggled. The East is better. I mean, I don't think it's really a debate at this point, and it's because of games like this. Columbus, New England, Atlanta, Toronto's going to get better. Nashville's allowed 2 goals this season. Maybe they're not the most fun team to play, but they're very tough to crack. And they have Cincinnati. So New England's as good as New England have played, this is going to be very difficult to kind of stay amongst them. But this is one of those games. And I forgot to mention when you asked what Bruce said, he goes, I can't really answer all these questions, but we'll get a much better idea of where New England stand on Monday after this game against Columbus, which was, obviously as a broadcaster, you get even more excited because this is a significant matchup. But I like New England a lot.
This Columbus team is firing on all cylinders. We broke this down earlier in the show, Max, but 12 goals for, 1 against in the last 3. They have Zelarayan. They have some big names, and this is a team just like New England that seems to be coming into well-form early on in the season. So Week 8 matchup, you already mentioned it's a big one, but the Revolution backline that's been pretty stout can't take this offense lightly because they can score.
Yeah, I was watching their game a couple nights ago where and I've actually seen a couple of their games where it's very similar what they do. They have an incredible coach, and that's kind of rare in MLS because Wilfred Nancy was under contract at Montreal. This is the guy we want, and they went out and got him, and they sold him on Columbus. I haven't been to their new stadium yet. I'm really excited to see it, but they're really serious about being successful and making this a club that wins week in, week out. And I was telling Brian Dunnett, my broadcast partner, this Nazi guy who keeps going, excuse me, maybe the U.S. men's national team want to give him a sniff because he's certainly been getting the results there. But they are relentless. They get possession. They track the ball well. If you have the ball, they're gonna try to dislodge it as well. They still have. I mean, Cucho Hernandez is arguably their best player. He's been out all season, but that hasn't, taken them off the rails whatsoever. Every one of their players is doing better than I think your expectations were. They have a lot of guys that they brought in from MLS Next Pro 2, which they won last year. So, some teams use that as an apparatus for their club. Columbus really delivers. So they have like 5 guys that were part of MLS Next Pro 2 that are now part of this team in 2023. Aiden Morris is now on that national team for this Mexico game. He is another one that just keeps going. He kind of reminds you of this throwback midfielder the U.S. would have that gives no quarter, takes no quarter. And then you have Lucas Zelarayan and Darlington Nagbe, who you could argue are the best player at their position. Zelarayan has got a lot more competition, obviously, for that mantle. But yeah, it's seemingly out of nowhere because they had a rough 2022, and now they've been able to put it together very quickly under the manager. And Christian Ramirez, another one, a guy who was available for so many clubs, and he comes in. He's got 3 goals this season. But the next pro guys, not to get too long-winded, like Mohamed Farsi and Will Sands, I don't know anything about them, but you watch these games, they pop off the screen. So they have a really good vision there, and this is a club, and I think New England too, that they're going to be there at the end. They're going to be amongst the small list of clubs competing to make it out of the East.
It's really funny that you look at both of these teams and you talk about the struggles that Columbus had in 2022. The Crew finished in 8th place last year with 46 points. The Revs finished in 10th place last year with 42 points. And you look at the first several weeks of the year and you're going, okay, that's not what these teams are resembling. I think we know where the Revs made their biggest fixes this year. Adding depth was a big part of it. Bringing in Latif Blessing from LAFC after the disaster of what happened with Ishmael Tajiri Shradi. The Revs get lucky and they pretty much get Blessing for free in that sense. We know where the Revs improved. Where do you think, and you kind of sort of laid it out already, but what do you think were the biggest improvements for Columbus in that offseason?
Well, obviously the manager, I think a vision about how they play. Dageneka, the Australian center back who passes so well, I think that's a game changer for them. And he was there for them last year, but I think he's taken a bigger role in what he has been able to do. But if you look at the difference from them last year and this year, it's the next pro players. It's the wing backs, and which plays into what the vision that they do, because those guys do so much work. And I think it's like a trickle down effect because those wing backs and the passing of the team is so good that their star players, Zelarayan and Nagbe, and this Alexandru Matan, I didn't know much about him, this Romanian player, but again, he's everywhere. It's this work rate that they are able to contribute. And Zelarayan is the guy that stirs the pot, but he was there in the past. But I think his job has been made a whole lot easier, as has Darlington Nagbe, because of the hard working around. And it's weird because, it's not like a high-profile player or somebody that just clicked that all of a sudden is, in high demand or his transfer market's gone through. I don't think anyone would say that about these Columbus players. They just they have bought into what this team could do. It's hard. Somebody should say, is it sustainable? But I feel comfortable that it is. And when the Cucho Hernandez comes back, maybe they just take it to another level. This is a club that has been relentless. They punish teams they're uncomfortable to play. And I think the biggest improvement has to be the manager, because I think he's made this possible. And he has given young players that opportunity, and they have all, to a man, have taken it running with both hands.
We'll wrap up with this one with Max Bretos from MLS Season Pass, which, by the way, you can watch the Revs and the Crew for free on Apple this weekend with the MLS Season Pass designation. Ishmael Tajiri Shradi. I know you were with LAFC last year, so I don't know how much you could talk about the way this all went down, but the Revs pretty much, for a lack of a better phrase, were given damaged goods when they were traded Tajiri Shradi from LAFC, and I think it was exchanged for TAM money last year, like $500,000 worth of TAM money. So, to your knowledge, what did LAFC know about its status before Ismail Tajiri Shradi's status, before shipping him off to New England? And do you think New England ended up getting the better of LAFC in the end by getting Blessing?
I don't know too much about it. When Izzy was here, he was great. I mean, he did have injury issues, but when he was on the field for LAFC, and I think eventually LAFC parted ways because he just didn't quite fit because they were very active in the marketplace. They brought in a lot of guys that were ahead of him in the pecking order, and I think that facilitated that move. And Latif Blessing, when he left, and I think he wanted maybe a new start. He wasn't starting as regular either. LAFC got Ilie Sanchez, they got Kellen Acosta last year, and then they had Jose Cifuentes. They had Timothy Tillman here, and they're really happy with those. They play with three in the midfield, and now they have Tillman who starts and Sifu kind of comes in there. So they had their midfield in place, and if Latif was here, probably would have really been stretched to get those minutes. And that allowed him to get this fresh start. I will tell you this, even when you ask LAFC fans, I would say when you ask them who their favorite player has been for that club, I would say probably 65% would say, I'd say maybe 60% would say Carlos Vela, and then about 30% would say Chief Blessing, and then 10% would say someone else. They loved him here. They adored him for the same reasons. I'm sure everyone in New England is enjoying his play, his relentless work, his emotions on his sleeve. He's, salt of the earth guy. He's like your little brother. I miss him, seeing him around the performance center sometimes with LAFC because he's just a ray of light. And then the way he plays it's weird because you would think more guys could kind of channel into that, work hard, be in positions, always be in support. It sounds easy, but it's not. Latif is really that, and he can give any club so much. So I'm so happy he's been able to excel there. And he has, another 10 years in this career, if not more. He's such a player. And everyone falls in love with him, whether it's coaches, whether it's players, his teammates, and certainly at the top of his fans. LAFC fans adored him. He was the favorite player. When he left, people were, they were up in arms in many ways because they had their Latif shirts and their jerseys, and they knew that he was going to do well there. So I'm fortunate it didn't work out for Izzy. I hope he can get his injuries in order, but you have a real good one in Latif Blessing.
Even saw when they did play out in LAFC, people had the Blessing jerseys on still. In New England, Max, that doesn't happen like that. When you go, you're gone. That's what happens.
Celtics are pretty good at acknowledging people when they leave.
I'm not talking about. I'm just talking about the audience. I'm talking about the crowd, the fan base. They did a good job for them out there. Well, you got a fun one this weekend.
He was there.
It's going to be a good game for sure.
Sorry about that.
It is official. He was there from the beginning. He was there. He was there from the expansion draft. He was their first player, and then they popped him in the starting 11, and he didn't get out of that group for the first 5 years of the existence of LAFC. So he was a foundation stone for the club.
Max Bretos, the legendary Max Bretos, bringing the sun on this Saturday morning on New England Soccer Weekly. Catch him tonight as the Columbus Crew take on the New England Revolution in a marquee matchup. One of the marquee matchups of the weekend.
Week 8 marquee matchup.
Week 8.
Love to see it.
Steaming along here. Max, we're going to have you back soon. Thank you so much for the time today, sir. Enjoy your weekend.
I look forward to it. Bring some of that New England sun out here.
Yeah, we're trying.
Back and forth
Thanks, Max.
this.
Appreciate it, man.
Max, thank you.